Horror novelist Ryan abandons everything and checks into a remote motel somewhere in rural America. Isolating himself from the outside world, he hopes to finally write the book his publisher has been waiting for. He gets started, only to discover that everything he writes within those walls mysteriously comes true. Before long, the heroine of his new novel, a young woman named Katie, pursued by a deranged serial killer, checks into the room next door. Ryan is the only person who knows how her story ends. A couple of years ago, Western social media exploded over a poll asking women a simple question. If they were alone in the woods, would they rather encounter a bear or a man? An overwhelming majority chose the bear, sparking a massive debate that quickly turned the phrase "man or bear" into a meme. Many men were offended by the results, but more importantly, the poll highlighted a very real fear many modern women have of men. Where that fear comes from, and whether it's justified in today's society, is a separate discussion. The important thing is that it exists, which means there's fertile ground for stories about conflicts between men and women that are more nuanced than the usual victim versus serial killer dynamic. One of the first notable films to tap into this conversation was Blink Twice, followed by the hugely successful Obsession, about an ordinary young man who magically forces the woman of his dreams to fall in love with him. I Know Exactly How You Die explores much the same territory. It approaches the subject from a different angle, but ultimately arrives at a similar idea. Even men who genuinely see themselves as good guys often believe they have the right to control women's lives, and that rarely ends well. The film begins as a fairly conventional slasher, with touches of dark humor, but shifts into meta territory during the second act. Ryan realizes that he has control over the events unfolding around him, and instead of saving Katie from the killer stalking her, he decides to exploit the situation for his own benefit. He ends up in bed with her and works through his own insecurities while people are dying all around him. It's an intriguing premise that, in the right hands, could have resulted in something as insightful as Obsession. Unfortunately, screenwriter Mike Corey and director Alexandra Spieth lack the experience to pull it off. They miss one opportunity after another, failing to keep the film's competing genres under control, and the entire movie gradually slips through their fingers. One of the central arguments in the man or bear debate was that if a woman says she was attacked by a bear, people will believe her. If she says she was attacked by a man, she'll probably have to prove it. I Know Exactly How You Die tries to play with that idea as well. Katie arrives at the motel claiming she's been stalked for months by a deranged mailman who keeps sending her other people's letters. The police found no criminal intent in his behavior and refused to intervene. The problem is that this completely falls apart once you see what actually happens on screen. Katie isn't just receiving unwanted letters. She's sent boxes containing body parts and eventually even corpses. Yet she keeps insisting that the police can't help her, and there's no point contacting them. Seriously? Unfortunately, that's only the beginning. The movie completely falls apart in its third act, when it's finally time to resolve its major storylines. The first thing to disappear is narrative logic and coherence, followed by any psychological credibility. By the end, all that's left is the moral that mistreating women is a bad idea, even if you think you're holding all the cards. Add the obviously tiny budget, bland visuals, and awkward direction, and the problems pile up. Any one of those flaws might have been easy to forgive on its own, but together they result in a movie that barks far louder than it bites, at least as a horror film. As another vote in favor of choosing the bear, though, it certainly counts.